Okay, minivan confessions. I'm driving again, which is never a good thing for anyone. So I may sound angrier than normal because I fucking hate driving in the city. And maybe this is why I'm thinking about it, but this subject drives me nuts. First of all, talking points in general. It shows either someone who is too simple to think for themselves, or they're just slick-ass, amoral politician types that don't care about the truth. They just want to win a fucking argument, right? And the purely positive community is awesome at creating highly marketable, accessible talking points. And one of them, the one that probably drives me the most crazy, is dogs aren't wolves. Dogs aren't wolves. I mean, would you look at chimpanzees to try to figure out human beings? It's catchy. It's a quick thing to say, a nice little quip, but the only problem is it happens to be factually incorrect. Wolves and dogs are taxonomically classified as the same species. Dogs are domesticated wolves, okay? Canis lupus, it's a subspecies, or dogs are subspecies Canis lupus. In taxonomy, a subspecies is inseparable from its parent species. They've just been differentiated. They have a different phylogenic expression due to geographic separation. But if they're brought back into proximity, they'll be able to interbreed, cohabitate, reproduce. And guess what? That's what's happened with dogs and wolves many times over. Feral dogs have actually found their way into wolf social units, and they've actually integrated into their pack. Can't say pack anymore. Into the family social unit of wolves and managed to reproduce. There are actually wolf hybrids that have been produced by feral dogs and wolves. Now, here's the thing. Plenty of sick fucks have fucked chimpanzees. Let's just for a second be honest. Not one of them has successfully reproduced. You know why? Because it's physically impossible. It wouldn't work. It's for the same reason that, a bunny and a tiger can't reproduce. It's not going to happen. Sorry. I mean, there's just been billions of people. There's got to be a few that are sick enough to fuck a chimp, I would assume. And I'm sure it's happened, And we don't have any chimp human babies running around. That's for a reason. We're separate species. Do you understand? There's a missing link between humans and chimpanzees in the evolutionary chain. We've been separated for millions of years. Dogs have been domesticated for tens of thousands of years. It could be 10,000, it could be a little less, it could be up to 60,000. We don't really know. But the fact is that evolution works on an incredibly vast time scale. Okay, so just to say like 10,000 years, that's nothing. That's not long enough for the genetic structure of a species to be altered dramatically enough for them to no longer be considered part of the same species. It takes much, much longer. Also, there have been plenty of dogs, for instance, dingoes. Dingoes were domesticated, they were wild, then they were domesticated, then they became wild again. They're feral. And what you're seeing also throughout, at least in the United States, because of bad breeding practices, is that we're actually starting to see more natural wolf behaviors start to pop up in domestic dogs, right? Because they're breeding poorly, and as a result of that, because they're not breeding carefully enough and paying proper attention to temperament, we're seeing more natural kinds of wolf behaviors, such as resource guarding, and which is ironic, because usually, like, dogs are being single trait bred for color or docility, and then we start to see over time more and more wolf-like behaviors for a lot of different reasons. That's a sort of a separate discussion, but you're seeing a lot of natural wolf behaviors start to reoccur in a lot of domestic dogs, and that shouldn't be happening. But anyway, if you want to understand dogs and you want to look at them and really get them, you have to understand the wolf, because a wolf is basically a pure dog. What we've done is we've taken wolves and we have, through selective breeding, we've enhanced certain qualities. So, for instance, just like terriers, their prey drive has been enhanced with a lot of them where it's off the charts, and it's more extreme than that of wolves. And then with other breeds, we've diminished other natural wolf qualities. So, for instance, a lot of sporting dogs, their docility is it's higher than in a wolf, obviously, but they've been selectively bred for that particular quality. So its aggression level has been diminished, but the baseline components of its personality and its instinctual drives are that of the wolf. It's just on some things the dial's going to get turned up a bit, and on others it's going to get turned down a bit. They say the dogs that are the most wolf-like tend to resemble wolves the most. So huskies, Malamutes, shepherds, they're closer to being in behavior. This is not proven, but I think it's probably a pretty solid bet. They're closer to wolves in terms of the natural sort of more organic form of behavior that you're going to observe across the breed, typically. But anyway, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether it's a fucking Chihuahua, a Husky, a Cane Corso, whatever. If you got to understand the essential components of canine instinct, and in order to get that, you have to get the wolf. You got to know what's driving them, and in order to understand the wolf, you have to understand social dominance as it's defined in ethology, as well as group leadership. Wolves are hierarchically organized. There is a breeding pair of wolves, and they have monopolized reproduction rights. Dominance is defined as first right to resources, right to discipline. They're the only ones who possess right to discipline. The group leaders, the reproductive pair. Okay? They're the most dominant members of the group almost always. They're also it's either an extended family or they're all their kids or puppies, basically, that are in the family social unit. So it's basically like kind of similar to like a traditional kind of Mediterranean patriarchy rather than like a military junta. But it doesn't matter. They're not an egalitarian species. We actually evolved in tribes that were hyper-egalitarian human beings. And of course now we have a fucking fascist for president. But no, we've been insistent probably since farming. That's when hierarchy first started to appear in human societies. Prior to that, it was largely absent. We think. I mean, the anthropology is... But there's a consensus across the board that human beings evolved in hyper-egalitarian tribes. Hierarchy was completely absent. So we don't really get hierarchy on an instinctual level, despite how we organize our societies now. Dogs do. They don't get equality. It doesn't... We equate hierarchy with subjugation, because that's what it requires of the human beings, because it's unnatural. Equality is it's a form of subjugation to dogs, because again, it's fucking unnatural. You have to force things on species that hasn't been, imprinted on their genetic structure through evolution over millions of years. That's when you end up with deep oppression, and that's basically what we're doing to our dogs. We're not acknowledging what social dominance is and how it drives their behavior, because we have fucking supposed animal experts out there saying they're not wolves. They can't even identify what species domestic dogs are. And then we have these just fat, shitty, poorly behaved dogs that can barely walk down the fucking street, that are dangerous, bite kids. They're too scared to go outside, and they end up being managed. They go out early in the morning and late at night because they can't fucking function. Gee, I wonder how that happened. You know, and that's a form of subjugation and oppression. Why? Because we're trying to impose something, egalitarianism, on them that is unfitting to the species. It's just not part of their instinctual structure. That's not who they are. So it's just the same as trying to impose tyranny on human beings. That's what we're doing. We're imposing a form of tyranny on dogs by not giving them leadership. Slightly counterintuitive if you just assume everyone's like you, that every species is like fucking human beings. But for those of us who aren't narcissists, we can imagine what it would be like for whether it's a person or another species who we don't have shared experiences with. We can theorize about these things. We can imagine the other. Go figure. I mean, that's nuts, right? Anyway, dogs are wolves. That's it. Dogs are fucking wolves. By the way, Brian Hare, that piece of shit who wrote The Genius of Dogs, I fucking hate that guy. He does MRI studies on dogs. He sticks them in MRI machines, and he goes, "Oh, look what we found." Yeah, 1% of dogs are calm enough, if that, to sit in an MRI machine for 20 fucking minutes. Nice job. That's a scientist, by the way. He said in an interview in the Smithsonian magazine I read recently, he said, I don't really have a dog in this fight, but, dogs aren't wolves, so I don't know. I don't know where that whole dominance thing comes from. You fucking piece of shit. You're a fucking scientist, and you're supposed to be an expert in this field. Nice. Real fucking good. He's a published author. Why don't I just have some... Look, I'm getting home to Bed-Stuy now. There's bound to be some fucking junkie hanging around. Maybe he can write a fucking book on dogs. Ridiculous. Dogs are wolves. And I challenge people in the fucking positive only community. I want you to I want someone to disprove this. I want you to do it. But you can't. You can't. In a quick Google search, fucking Wikipedia, just Google it. Google it. Don't take my fucking word for it. Say, are dogs and wolves the same species? And look at a few different articles, because you're going to... you're going to find it's dogs, so of course there's going to be tons of propaganda. Figure it out. And then you determine who's fucking lying. Dogs are wolves. They're domesticated wolves. It's the same fucking species, same instinctual prism through which they experience the world. You want to understand the dog, you understand the wolf.